Palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? Those who are here for the first time, what brings you here?
I'm new to the great state of California. I like to meditate on my own, and I think I might like to do it with other people. So here I am.
I know a lot of these people. You might want to rethink that. Welcome to the state of California. It's not that bad.
I like it so far.
Nice. Welcome. Where'd you come from?
Florida.
Oh, right on. Well, welcome to California.
Thank you.
No comment. Yeah.
For me, my neighbor recommended it actually.
Right on.
Come in here, so.
Nice. Well, glad you're here. Anyone else first time? I saw hands that way, so. Yeah, one more.
I don't even really know what to say. I just wanted to explore something different, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I dragged him along. Well, I didn't drag, he wanted to go, but this morning I kind of sprung it on him, so here we are.
Dragged each other.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's maybe only an hour, so if you hate it, it probably won't be the worst thing in the world, and you don't ever have to come back. So hopefully you'll be all right. Well, welcome. And for those of you who, for some reason, do keep showing up, why? Let's cut through the joke answers. Let's get to why do you really show up? Why show up here? For those who continue to. Yeah?
A reminder of what's important.
Yep. Reminder what's
I
important.
miss it.
Say again, sorry?
And how much I miss it when
Miss-
I can't come.
Yes.
It helps with perception for things and just having a group of people to kind of encourage you that it's going to be okay.
For sure. Yeah. Or it's not going to be okay, and that's
Well,
okay.
Exactly. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. What else? I saw a hand somewhere. Yeah.
It helps to stabilize the practice.
Yeah. For sure. Stabilize the practice. What else? Okay.
Just being in a community with people who are on the same path as you.
Yeah. In community with people on the same path. I just repeat things for those virtually who maybe can't hear you also. What else? Yeah.
Personal growth.
Personal growth. Definitely. Absolutely. What else? Anybody? And even if you don't share, it's always good just to kind of reflect, in your own mind, in your own heart, to ask yourself, just to kind of explore, remind yourself the reasons, for those of you who practice, why. Yeah.
I tend to complicate. I call it complicate.
Yeah.
I believe it's always a reminder that it can be simple.
Yeah, for sure. To not complicate things and to keep things simple. Yeah. It's always good to, oh yeah, go ahead.
I like to come back and often hear the same thing over and over until it finally sinks.
Yeah. Well, it's good. Somebody finally recognizes I really do just say the same thing over and over. Right? But we're just like, why can't we get it? It's funny. For me, I take that kind of the teaching of the Buddha where it's often referred to as he'll be kind of presented as someone who said the same thing 84,000 different ways. It's just kind of an example of we do often need to hear the same thing over and over and over again. And sometimes if this exact same thing is presented in a little slightly different way or from somebody else or heard at a different time in our life, sometimes we wake up in the morning and we're okay to hear things that maybe don't sit well with us. And then maybe later in the day, we might hear the exact same thing, but maybe we're in a bad mood or whatever is going on and we don't want to hear it. So even hearing the same thing at different points throughout the day is important. One of my favorite books is Zen Mind Beginner Mind by Suzuki Roshi, Shunryu Suzuki. And for me, it's always been one of those books. You can read it once, you don't understand it, and that's great. You can read it again, you don't understand it, and that's great. And you just keep reading it, you keep referring to it, or any teaching for that matter, but for me that's the one. But where your mind is at and what's going on in your life, we respond to things differently. So when we bring the teaching into our lives, depending upon what state of mind we're in mentally and emotionally and physically, we also will respond to that teaching differently. So, and that is part of, for me, keeping it very simple, is to not complicate this stuff. You know, most scholars will tell you that everything the Buddha taught is in the Four Noble Truths. That's it. I mean, it's the first thing he said, and that's why I always touch on them. Very often people will say to me, well, are you ever going to talk about anything other than the Four Noble Truths? As if they've, mastered that or something. And I say, have you gone one day without being greedy, angry, or ignorant? Have you gone one day with doing nothing but thinking kind thoughts, speaking good words, and doing good deeds? And the answer to that is always no, or they're just lying to me. And so then you always have to come back to the Four Noble Truths, because that's the foundation of everything the Buddha taught. So it's not about going beyond that, thinking, okay, well, what's next? It's about recognizing and reflecting with where are we with these teachings. Yeah.
Along those lines, it's making all of that making all of that a habit.
A habit. Yes.
Routine and more comfortable. Always
Yes.
there.
Yeah. And that's, for many of us, I can't speak for anyone else in the room here, but some of us may have spent much of our lives cultivating habits that are not so healthy, that are not so great. And so this is an opportunity to introduce or reintroduce healthy habits into our lives. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
The way I see it too, I kind of look at this as eating your vegetables. That's a great analogy. If you've been eating vegetables for 10 years and you stop eating them for 2 months, you're still probably going to feel not that great.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead. We'll start with the meditation practice. For those joining virtually, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free as you are to say hello. When we get to questions, you can put some questions there as well. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. If you're on a bench or chair, however you are seated, if comfortable, trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything from this practice. We are just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. Eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. the body's still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is filled with chaos, conflict, difficulties, challenges. This is life. Life is also filled with moments that are incredibly wonderful and beautiful and happy and joyful. But either way, that's our life. It's just an endless, endless experience of moment to moment to moment. And our mind chooses how to view each one of those individual moments. And our perception of that moment completely determines how we feel. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting. It's breathing. It's becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do at all times. And that's it. And that just repeats. Because every day, if we have the ability to think and speak and do, that's what we're doing in each moment. So very often people think that Buddhist practice is about something outside of themselves, especially for those who might be brand new or newer to this practice, as if it's going to teach you something outside of you. Buddhist practice is like holding up a mirror and just reflecting back on yourself. Your thoughts, your words, your actions. That creates your reality. That's all this practice is, and that never changes. Some days that might be a little bit easier for you, and some days it's a little more challenging. Like I said earlier, it just depends on how you feel that day and how genuine and honest you want to be with your actual thoughts and words and actions. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything outside of us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world outside of us, life gets simpler. We begin to stop trying to control everything and everyone, and we just allow life to occur. Because it can be gone any moment. And we don't know when that moment comes. But we do know it will come. So if it's going to be gone at some moment, why waste time being angry and miserable? Why waste time holding grudges? Why waste time judging and critiquing every little stupid thing that most of this shit doesn't even matter? Yes, there are, relatively small percentage of things in our lives that are incredibly important and painful. And we deal with trauma, we deal with loss, we deal with death, we deal with heavy things in our lives. But many people are not miserable all day long because of those heavy things. Those things occur, and then our latte is made the wrong way, and it ruins 3 days of our life. So, begin to understand where the heavy things are in our life that we really sit with, and begin to understand what are the little things that are just not worth your time and energy and attention. Because, most people I find have a lot of those little things, and if we just set them down, then we can also just be more present and face the things that really matter in life. But set down all those little things that are just relatively meaningless. And we're on this earth for such a brief period of time. Why waste it with all the little stuff that probably a week from now won't even matter? So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for some questions. Again, for those who are joining virtually, thanks for being here. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to say hello if you have any questions. There's a comment here referring to my question at the beginning, just why you show up. So somebody here said, "Hey Jeff, adding to the comment about repeating the same teachings, I started watching your first live videos from February 12th, 2019. Aside from the camera angle, there's no difference in what you say." See, so according to that, based on our millions of YouTube followers, you all could really just stay home, lay on the couch in bed, hit play, and you don't even need to show up, But I appreciate the point. I'm not kidding. I've been saying the same shit for like 10 years. But we'll still open up the question so I can still respond the same way because we still haven't figured it out. So, yeah.
So I've had this experience a couple times where, maybe I'll be angry about something and someone did, and then I'll kind of catch myself. I'm like, okay, this is wrong thinking, it's coming from anger, it's one of the 3 words that you should stop. And then 10 minutes later, I walk back at it again.
Yeah.
So how do you make the leap from a sort of intellectual understanding that wrong thinking is bad and should be avoided to not doing it?
To actually doing it, yeah. No, it's a good question. Again, just to paraphrase for those who virtually couldn't hear it, you recognize that you're angry and you're kind of stuck in some wrong thinking and you realize you shouldn't be that way, so you maybe can set it aside and then 10 minutes later you're back stuck in that anger again. And so the question is around how do you move from intellectually thinking that to actually doing it, right? First and foremost, I always, around these questions, I think it's important which doesn't answer your question, but I think it's important also from the standpoint for you or maybe anybody else, who often will feel like, okay, I've been at this stuff for 3 years, how come it doesn't work yet? It's not a quick fix. What I mean by that is, how long have you been at this stuff, meditation and looking at Buddhist teachings? How long?
Less than a year.
Less than a year, right?
Yeah.
So, a year ago, you would have been stuck in anger and not even thought that there was another option, or not even thought that 10 minutes later you could have set that anger down and picked it back up. So I always start there because I want people to hopefully understand that patience is important. And the fact that you are less than a year into this practice and recognizing that you're stuck in anger and 10 minutes later it comes back, that means you're giving yourself 10 minutes of not being angry. So congratulations. Again, this doesn't answer your question. I never answer questions, really. I just leave you hanging enough to keep you practicing, right? If I gave you all the answers, you really would stop showing up and then I'd get bored. So, but I think it's important, again, first to, good job. It takes practice to get to that point. And then from there, the reality is you just keep doing what you're doing. Because whatever you've been doing for less than a year has put you in a position to where you're recognizing anger, you're recognizing that you don't want to have that anger, and you're able to set that anger down, I'm just using this example from your words, for 10 minutes. And then 10 minutes later, you're angry again. There's not one specific thing. You just keep practicing. And one day you're like, oh, I set that anger down for, I don't even use this as, I shouldn't even give this example because it's not like some linear thing where, oh, now it became an hour, now it became a day. You could be doing this for the next 10 years. And one moment you'll be able to set anger down for 6 months, and one moment you'll be able to set anger down for 6 seconds. But it's the constant practice that reminds you it is possible to set anger down. This stuff isn't, again, this isn't the nature of your question, but it's not like you pop a pill or press a button and you're like, okay, that's it. So that's the first part. The second part, which is, in most cases, when you begin to cultivate a regular meditation practice, you explore Buddhist teachings, what ends up happening is what gets us to even that place of setting anger down for 10 minutes, just using that example, is to begin to recognize that what we're angry at is impermanent and will go away and will pass. And what we're angry at simply means, for the most part, as you said, the three poisons, the greed, the anger, the ignorance, that there's only one reason, and this is a very broad generalization, but there's only one reason that we get angry. What is it? Oh man, you all got a long way to go. Why do we get angry?
Because we are not in control of everything.
Not in control of everything for sure. But
people do things we don't like.
Yeah, those damn people, you know? Yeah. But that's it. People do things we don't like. Or a situation happens. The only reason we get angry is because something happened that we don't like. That's it. One thing is the cause of all of our anger. Things happen that we don't like. The reality is our entire lives are going to be filled with things happening that we don't like. So first is to recognize that your whole life is going to be filled with things that you don't like. I mean, that's the first noble truth. Life is filled with dukkha, suffering. I mean, he's a pretty smart dude. He said, your life is going to be filled with things that you don't like. But very often we want to kind of skip that, and I get it. We want to skip to removing, ending, minimize, as I say, suffering. So I get the desire, the craving to want to remove the dukkha, the suffering, the discomfort, the angst, the anger, whatever it might be. But sometimes we just have to sit with it and see it for what it is, something that will change. And the beauty of setting down things that you're welcome. The beauty of setting down things that make us angry is then it creates space for you to pick up something else that makes you angry. So, whatever you're angry at him about, set it down because he's going to do something else soon. What else? Yeah.
I think that just to that point.
Are you going to ask a question or are you going to share a teaching?
I'll ask a question. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. I think.
I've known him a long time.
Yeah. So, is it because focusing on it and trying to change and manipulate it sometimes isn't possible, that it's best to learn to just sit with the things that make us angry?
It's never possible to manipulate things. It's only possible to construct things in your mind that you perceive as okay. Manipulation is just an illusion. Control is just an illusion. The image that I share all the time, the kind of meme thing that I love, is there's a picture of somebody sitting on the beach, and they're on a lawn chair or beach chair, and their feet are kicked up, and they got some little fruity drink with an umbrella in it. I'm sure it's non-alcoholic. And they're looking out at the ocean. And it says, relax, nothing is under control. So our attempt to manipulate and control things. Now, I'm not suggesting, for those who maybe are here for the first time or have never heard me share this, I'm not suggesting that if we're in toxic, abusive, unhealthy, dangerous situations, that we just sit there and say, well, this is out of my control. No, remove yourself from situations. Right? We have the ability to move, physically, mentally, emotionally, to move. So this practice isn't about just ignoring what's happening and putting ourselves in dangerous situations. But in most cases, the question that you're addressing is not about that. It's about all the things in your life that you are forever trying to control and make a certain way. And we end up dying before we even complete that process. And then we're dead and we're trying to control that. So it is a setting down of all the manipulation and control that we are trying to do. And for me as a practitioner, that was one of the most liberating things, was just to set it down. Because that effort to manipulate and control and structure every little detail, every little way, will lead you here Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. So, yeah. What else? Yeah.
I have a question about Buddhist tradition and as it relates to babies. Do Buddhists practitioners in temples bring babies ever? Or like, I'm just wondering because like in, Christian religions and pretty much every religion, you always see babies at church and stuff like that, but it seems kind of although a baby would be a great teacher in a meditation because they'd be making a lot of noise. But what's the take on babies and when are they brought into the Buddhist religion? Not speaking from personal experience here.
Not speaking from a mom who just had a baby, but asking for a friend. One, Buddhists do like babies. We're cool with babies, right? They're always welcome. Please bring your baby so everybody can meet your baby.
She's on a meditative walk right now.
All right, there we go. Also, as I'm sure you both know, that once a month, Saturday morning, 9 a.m., we have a family sangha where the parents meet up here with other parents who are trying to figure out survival mode while raising children. The kids are downstairs, usually 4 or 5 years old to 10, 12 years old. They're downstairs doing fun, little peaceful, compassionate arts and crafty and reading type stuff. And the toddler type babies are being safely watched in a confined area. So there's that, and I highly recommend, I'm sure you guys both knew that was there, but I really recommend that aspect, the family sangha, simply because, it's just like this, but the room is filled with other parents who are going through similar things. And of all stages, you don't have to have like a 4-year-old to come to the family sangha. If your kid is 15, if you're a parent, your kid is 30 and you're still struggling, then show up. Obviously it's geared towards younger, but it's a parent group. So those things are very helpful. Some other things you said. I love, now I can't speak for anybody else in the room, but I love screaming babies during meditation. I love when phones ring. I love when dogs bark, like the dog that would bathe every, Saturday for like a year at 11:15, 11:20, and we all got to listen to the dog get through the bath outside here. Because those things are present. I do often suggest that for the parent, typically, if, able, if one is privileged enough to have that be the case, then this time is often for the parent. Because if you're sitting here and the baby is screaming and crying, then you're worried about the baby, you're worried about what everybody else is thinking, So it is nice to allow yourself that time. But yeah, Buddhists like babies. There's no and then more specific to your question around the religious question around, Buddhism and other religions and things like that. Buddhism is a philosophy and a way of life. It's also perceived and practiced religiously around the world, so it depends on where you're at. 99% of people don't come here for the religion of Buddhism. They come here for the community, the sangha, and the philosophical way of life. But even from a religious standpoint, Buddhists, there's formal family rituals, baby rituals. There's all that stuff that goes on. I wouldn't draw a parallel to like a baptism or, a bar mitzvah or something like that. But even in Asian cultures, many of them still today, it is very common for when, to my knowledge, it's still just the boys, but in places like Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, it's common for the young son to actually be sent to a monastery for a period of time, maybe 2 weeks, 4 weeks or something like that, to do kind of a short-term monastic retreat. But again, that's in countries where Buddhism is, where it's 95% Buddhist in that country, for example. So those things do exist. Yeah.
I just want to throw out, I have a nephew who's in Buddhist school in
Yeah.
Thailand.
Oh, very nice.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I have lots of friends, some friends here who grew up here, but from Thai, Lao, Cambodian, families that, they're like 14 and on their winter break or something, they're spending a week in a monastery, and they shave their heads and put on the robes and go through the whole deal. So yeah, it's normal. Yeah. What else? There's a comment here. It's the intro to Buddhism and meditation. People can attend and learn different practices in different classes. Yeah, absolutely. We built, for whoever's sharing this, and for those who haven't heard it, as we say at the end, we built the Dharma Bum Temple to introduce various schools of Buddhism from a bunch of unenlightened people. So every night we have different practices going on, and I'll say this at the end, from different people leading. And each class we have is led by a different person, different personality, different approach, different school to Buddhism. And to me, that's for me, one of the greatest things about this place. If this ever became one way, it's no longer the Dharma Bum Temple. So, yeah. What else? So thank you for sharing that, King Ashoka. I always wanted to meet King Ashoka, so thank you. Yeah.
Going back to babies.
Yeah.
And then when they become teenagers.
Yeah.
And everybody says, and then you're in it and you go, oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
I work with teenagers all day. They're much easier than the teenager I'm raising. I guess my question is seeing the suffering of a teenager. And remembering being that, but also in my mind going, this is ridiculous, you know, but not wanting to be there. That's not helpful. From a Buddhist standpoint, how best do we give them what they need in this time? Because I think a lot of my suffering is around not knowing how best to give them what they need. And am I saying the wrong thing, or is the thing I'm not saying the wrong thing? And so I don't know, it's very vague, whatever. I'm looking for, you know, I want to bring them. They're going to roll their eyes the whole time, but I don't care. But anything else?
Yeah. I mean, angry, pissed off, depressed teenagers, I mean, I know that better than anyone, so bring them. But Saturday morning, 9 a.m., we have a family sangha. But, you know, I think from a very specific with Buddhist teachings, right? So we look at your question around, you know, being a teacher and being with teens all day, but now raising a teen. Yes, very different. The classroom, in essence, this is the Buddhist teaching on non-attachment. So your kids in school, you love them, you care about them. You know, yeah, maybe you'll think about some of them when you go home and continue with the rest of your day. But you have your time with them, and then you separate that from them. When it's, you know, children, loved ones, and as you all know or don't know, I'm not a parent, I don't give parental advice, so I'm going to stay clear of that. But from a Buddhist practice standpoint, this is the opportunity to practice non-attachment, to practice endless compassion, and to practice allowing, again, practice, because this isn't easy, allowing each individual's karma to play out, meaning every child, every adult, every person, every animal has their own journey. And we have an opportunity to impact that journey. But they will walk the journey, right? A 1-year-old, 2-year-old, they're not running around outside by themselves yet. Somebody's there holding their hand. When they hit, how old now? 14 or something? Almost 14, right? I just guessed it. But when they hit that age, probably not wanting to hold mom's hand walking around the block anymore, right? And just wait. I mean, I hate to jump to the good news, right? Just wait till it hits 16, 17, 18. And as you alluded to, I guarantee you didn't listen to very much your parents told you when you were a teenager. So as long as you, as I often say, my master always said, learn to expect nothing from anyone ever. The sooner you embrace the expectation that people just aren't going to listen to you, especially a teenager, then you can begin to bring in compassion, loving kindness, and non-attachment. You've kind of said everything, I think, from a practice standpoint you need to do. The hardest part is doing it, which is you let them know you love them. You let them know you care about them. You understand that you're probably at some point in your parenthood going to give great advice, and probably at some point going to give advice, and you're like, well, that was wrong. It's just life. They're going to make their own choices. You love them. You care about them. You create a safe and a kind environment for them. But when they hit that age, they're going to make their own choices. And no matter how much you think you can control them, you know, Suzuki Roshi, again, the great Zen master, is teaching around how to control cattle, right? And I'm not drawing a parallel here to teenagers and cattle, but he talks about you can't just lock them in a fence, but you also can't just ignore them. You watch them. You let them know you're there. You love them. You care about them. You know? And you practice non-attachment, which is understanding. Non-attachment, for those who've never heard non-attachment doesn't mean you don't love. Non-attachment is not a cutting off. It's not a severing. It's not caring. Non-attachment is loving without attachment, without control. Again, age is, you know, key factor here. But you love them and you know that they're making their own choices. And you just pray and hope shit will work out. So, anything else before we close? All right, so I'm going to join palms. We'll close on that. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May merit also be transferred to Laura Walsh during her time of rebirth, and to Carla and Brenda and their family and friends who suffer at this time, and to Jean's father during his time of rebirth, and her family and friends who suffer at this time. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. All right, so a few announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We are just practitioners. We take our best understanding from an unenlightened perspective of Buddhism, and we share it in a way that makes sense to us. So as I alluded to earlier, each night we have different people leading different classes coming from a different Buddhist tradition. Thursday, 4:30, we do, I think, probably one of the best things around here. It's a food redistribution program. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on the street every night. So anytime you lack gratitude, you lack appreciation for life and things around you, feed people who sleep on the street, and it tends to wake you up a little bit. If that doesn't work, go back and keep doing it until you see things a little bit differently. First Saturday of the month, we have a half day of silence, 4 hours. We have a couple new things coming up, or relatively new that just started. Wednesday nights, Bob, who's been on and off for the last probably 4 or 5 months, is back on. He's now doing for 4 weeks, and he'll take a week off and then back on for 6 weeks, but he's doing some compassion cultivation training and looking at, training is kind of the wrong word, but compassion practice and looking at how to bring Buddhist practice into daily life. He's back Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. If you haven't sat with Bob, he's wonderful. Just a really a great person. Also downstairs on Wednesday nights at 7 in the kind of newly renovated Buddha For You Meditation Hall, Ken is leading a Zen practice where it's for the most part just a silent sit. So if you want to just sit silently for an hour in a very traditional Zen practice, that's Wednesday nights at 7. Also in a couple weeks, and this hasn't even been announced yet, but we'll be starting we're going to shift the Dharma Bum Basics class a little bit. And we're going to be starting a new Thursday night group led by Bonnie, who she just finished our second cohort of our our Buddhist Women's Engaged Leadership Program. So she'll be leading that starting on Thursdays, and it's going to be looking at Pema Chodron's book titled Becoming Bodhisattvas. So in essence, it's bringing the Bodhisattva practice into your life. So that'll start on the 3rd. I think it is another couple weeks, but that'll be new on Thursday nights in a couple weeks. So that'll be really great. She's wonderful. And I'm really excited after all these years to have her kind of step in and lead a class. So other than that, same drill, Buddha For You is down there if you want it. We don't have a cleaning crew, we are it. So if anybody wants to stick around and help clean up, we don't have anything else going on today, so we can close the windows. That would be great on the sides here. Thank you all for